Hello, everyone. I wanted to take a few moments to welcome you to today's fourth and last webinar of the Winning Strategies series, Implementing Your Project. Thank you for being with us today. Today is going to be pretty quick. It's going to take maybe half an hour. We're just going to go over a quick few things. We'll get started while people keep joining. It should, by the time we get to the content, I think we'll have a few more people. So we'll get started. So we're really going to talk about the implementation of a successful project, as well as what common mistakes are made while putting in place a project. So who am I? My name is Patrick Ferrand. I'm the Bilingual Ottawa Program Manager at ACFO Ottawa. So that's the Association des Communautés Francophones d'Ottawa. So the French Community Association of Ottawa. So you'll see here my email address and my phone number. You should have received that by email if you received the invitation to be here today. So please feel free to contact me, write to me, call me, anything in regards to Francophonie in Ottawa, maybe the new round of funding that's been announced recently, the program, anything. I'll be there to chat. I'd be willing to help if it has to do with anything in link to my job. So I'll be there if I can. So feel free to contact me and we'll see where we can go. I'll move on from there. So what is the Bilingual Ottawa program? So for those who don't know, the Bilingual Ottawa program, also known as the Ottawa Bilingue, is a micro-grant program for small businesses, small nonprofit organizations in Ottawa to promote bilingualism in Ottawa. So there will be a new round of funding applications being accepted from April 5th to May 6th. So that's in about a month. And we'll be evaluating those projects after that and getting back. We'll have a quick Q&A session at the end for anyone who has any questions specifically to the new round of funding. So stick around for that as well. So there's two types of funds. There's the activation funds, which go up to $10,000, as well as propulsion funds that are up to $20,000. So only nonprofits are eligible for the propulsion projects. Meanwhile, nonprofits and small businesses can apply for the activation grants. So in 2021, we distributed $485,000 into the community, and we're hoping to distribute a similar amount for this round of funding as well. So as well in 2021, we managed to reach 38% of the population of Ottawa. So that shows a bit of the kind of impact that we're looking for with the projects. And the goal is to promote bilingualism, offer a new French service or activity, and to support Francophone community integration into Anglophone events. So quick few things about the webinar. We are being recorded today. But only my camera should be on, only I'll be talking. So there shouldn't be any stress about that. It will be shared online afterwards on YouTube. So if you have any questions, any resources to share, you can do them in the chat or in the Q&A. And as they pop up, I'll try to answer them as they come. So we'll move forward. And just to test the chat, I'll invite you guys to write your name, maybe your ward or your neighborhood, maybe your title or occupation or your organization that you work for, just to let others know who's here today with us. So again, as I was saying, we're not many. It'll go by pretty quickly today, but we're just going to talk about a few points and then a quick Q&A on the new round of funding. Well, perfect. Welcome, Adriana. Nice to see you there. So yeah, we really have we talked about the Bilingual Ottawa program, the Zoom agenda, and now the agenda. So we're going to have a quick recap on what the last webinars were about. We'll talk about knowing your criterias, about reports, follow-ups, and feedbacks, and what are the first steps to take to put your project into place. And then we'll have a quick session for questions or information on the new round of funding, if anyone has any questions. So we'll get started right away. So going back on the last few webinars, all three of them are available on YouTube, and this fourth one will be as well once we've completed it. So this is the last one. So the first one was developing a project idea. So we talked about targeting a public and an intention. We discussed aiming for quality impact. We discussed developing your concept, partnerships and participation, funding. So that kind of led us to the second one, which was developing a financial calendar and a budget for your project. So in that webinar, we really talked about the types of funding that are available, the pertinence of having a budget and a financial calendar for your project, how to develop your budget. We talked about funding. And then we led to the third one, which was submitting a grant application. So that one had the 10 steps of a grant application, which were determining your eligibility, establishing a work plan, testing your project idea, contacting the funder, writing the application, how to work with collaborations, doing your budget, making sure you review everything properly, submitting the application, and then follow-ups afterwards. So those are the three webinars that have passed, and today's the fourth one. We're kind of just wrapping it up and if anyone has any questions. So again, those are all available on YouTube to be reconsulted if you so wish to. If there's any questions, I'm keeping an eye open on the chat or the Q&A. So far, I haven't seen anything pop up specifically, but we'll keep an eye on that and we'll keep going. So knowing your criterias, it's really important to know your criterias when you're starting your project to make sure that you have the right strategies in place. So the first thing you want to keep in mind is what are your performance indicators in your grant agreement? By knowing these, you want to have a plan to measure them as you go. So we did have a list of examples of performance indicators in the third webinar. If you're interested, I'd say go take a look at that. But it's really important to know them so that you can measure them as you go. And if there's anything that's really important to put in place from the start, you'll have that stuff ready. Also, what are your budget limits? It's really important to know your budget limits when you're starting your project, so we don't get ahead of ourselves. So it's really important to respect the eligible expenses, the eligible revenues, and the various clauses in your grant agreement. If you have any questions about that, I'm sure the funder will be more than happy to answer those questions. Also, do you have any visibility requirements? So it's really important to keep in mind if you have logos to include, maybe promotion to put in place, or a project launch. It's important as the project progresses to not leave it on the back burner. Sometimes we'll forget right until the end that, oh darn, we forgot to announce that we were doing the project, or we forgot to show the funder's logo. It's really to your advantage to do it right off the start. So not only do people start hearing about your project, they start knowing what's going on, and your funder's already going to be reassured that you've got the right visibility in place. And then you also want to make sure that there aren't any other specific clauses in your grant agreement. So some funds will come with specific stipulations. So it's important to make sure you've read your entire grant before signing, but especially before you start doing your project. So reports. It's important to keep an open line of communication with your funder because submitting a quality report in time will help the image of your organization as well as your project in the eyes of your funder. So a few quick things to keep in mind. I would suggest you set up a reminder in your calendar 1 week or so before the required submittal dates for your reports. I always have those automatic notifications in my calendar that will pop up a week or so before to make sure I have everything I need to start writing that report. And you want to make sure you get in touch with your funder ahead of time if you're missing information or certain documents. Sometimes an extension can be made. Sometimes maybe there's an alternate document that can be submitted to compensate. So if you're missing anything or if you're unsure, it's best to get ahead and get in contact with your funder as soon as possible in regards to those items. It's also easier to write a report once the information has been compiled all along. So as you start your project, you want to make sure that you keep collecting all that information. You have a system in place to collect that information. It's going to make that report writing a lot easier at the end. And submitting a quality report will also increase your funder's confidence in future projects that you'll be submitting. So a good project might not seem as good if the report was submitted 3 weeks late, unfortunately. So you've done all this great work on a project. You don't want it to get maybe a bad image because the report was late. So make sure you're submitting everything on time and make sure you have automatic reminders in case we get really busy and forget things. It's normal, so we want to have those reminders for us. And another suggestion I would have would be to write your report in an external document from the platform before copy pasting it to the online platform. Sometimes we can have technical errors. There could be a glitch. There's all sorts of reasons things can go wrong when we're working with computers. So I would suggest you write your report in maybe a Google document or a Word document, something that's external from the online platform to save your work. So again, don't wait till the last minute to write your report. You might have some bad surprises. It's very unfortunate, but it's the reality of report writing. So when implementing your project, you will no doubt have lots to accomplish. So one of my first suggestions would be to get a system that works for you to track your ongoing tasks. I use an app called Todoist, so Todoist. And what I like about it is that it allows me to prioritize my projects, also send them to certain dates. So if I have a task that I know is going to be coming up in 3 weeks and I don't need it on my plate right now, I can shoot it to 3 weeks from now. It'll pop up when I get to that time. So I find that app really useful for that. I know there's a lot of similar apps out there, so find what works for you. And even if it's not on your phone or on your computer, a notebook is very useful. I also use a notebook for all my tasks, maybe post-its, sorry. So really make sure you have your own system to track those tasks coming up. So a few tasks to keep in mind when preparing your project. So you will have to be receiving and paying bills to external contracts. That's always important to be done on time, not only for your spending stipulations, but also because the people that you hire, you want to make sure that they're being paid in a reasonable time frame. So it's important to keep those tasks in mind. From the start, you want to be keeping a good promotion and a good visibility of the project. So that's very important as well. Instead of just having it as an afterthought, we want to make sure we keep the promotion going. It's going to help increase the impact. It's going to help increase the participation to our activities. So it's really important to keep that promotion and visibility going all along. Also, we want to keep an eye out on your various calendars to avoid falling behind schedule. Really important to keep in mind. It kind of making a little note to the financial calendar that we talked about in the second webinar. But yeah, so having an eye on those calendars will help you stay on schedule. Also want to make sure you're following up with your partnerships on a regular basis. Make sure things aren't falling through the cracks on that front. And you want to make sure that the deadlines for reports, you want to make sure you've noted the deadlines for your reports and what must be submitted by these dates. Important to know, again, with the automatic reminders or any other system that you have, but you really want to make sure that you have those deadlines marked somewhere that you're going to be checking on a regular basis. And you also want to remember, as you put your project in place, as it progresses, that you remember to gather feedback from your participants. It's really important because sometimes we might finish our activity and forget to have done the feedback, and then we kind of have to scramble to get that. So it's important to keep in mind all throughout the implementation of the project. You also want to try and keep your funders informed about any changes to your project and make sure you invite them to your activities. So if there's changes to your dates, maybe to the amount of activities you're going to be doing, keep your funders informed. They much rather have the information as it changes than get it in a final report at the end and be surprised. If there's changes that happen during the project implementation and it might change a bit of the criteria of the project, it's important to have that discussion with your funders so that you can make sure that you're still respecting what was agreed upon in your grant agreement. So feedback. Feedback from participants, funders, is really important for the evolution of your project and to make sure it grows into something more than what it already is. So you want to have something in place to collect this information from the start as well. So there's a lot of various ways of collecting feedback on your projects. So we could be sending a feedback survey after the activity to the people who participated. It could be as easy as a personal email exchange. We could also be looking at feedback forms to fill out during the activity. We could also ask participants for recorded feedback, videos, sound snippets. It's all great resources to have. Also very, very useful to take pictures of our event and our project. Even if it's not asked upon in our grant agreement, it's always nice to be able to show what we've been doing in a physical sense and really show it to anyone who's interested, really. And there's also a way to incorporate getting your feedback through your activities. I've often seen maybe when it's been like a day camp or something, at the end of the day, they'll ask the kids to draw an image of how they felt throughout the day or what they learned about that day. So it kind of gives a different way to present the feedback to your funder. That's a little bit more creative, a little bit more innovative, and it really stands out. It's fun to see people showing their feedback in more than just a 1 to 5 scale, we could say. So yeah, trying to incorporate feedback through the activities is always a great way to also assure that you're going to have that feedback at the end of the day. Any questions so far? I haven't seen any. I've been going pretty fast, but there isn't a lot of content today, so we'll keep going. So first few steps that I would suggest to put your project in place. So to get started on the right foot, you should probably start by contact the implicated partnerships to confirm that the project has received funding. Let them know that the money's coming, that the project's going to be a go. So you can start brainstorming on what are the first steps you'll be taking together to put the project in place. You also want to make sure you inform your team of the project, that the project's been funded, the deadlines to come, so that they can plan on the implication that will be required of them. If you're adding some tasks to the workload, or if they're going to be attributed from a different sector of your organization, it's really important to inform them ahead of time so they can plan for it. And planning is really important when we're doing our projects. So again, informing our team is always a great step. Also, by evaluating the need for potential additional human resources, once we've targeted that, then we can start our recruitment. As we all know, sometimes recruiting new team members or volunteers can take a bit of time. So it's something that we want to get started off right on the start of our project if we already know what we'll be needing. We could also make an initial plan to purchase the required equipment to start the project. If we have a long-term project and there's a lot of different activities, well, maybe we can start purchasing the equipment for the first activity if necessary, making sure that everything's in place so we don't end up having a big rush in one part of the project. And you also want to make sure you have a public announcement to announce the project, to fund the project and the funding. Make sure you invite the funder as well. And the reason I would say to try and do this right off the bat is because you're already going to start reaching your target population. You'll start creating a name for the project in the community. People will start being able to recognize maybe the different designs you've been putting out or the different posters you've been putting out, so that when the activities are taking place and the project's really starting to gain traction, well, people have already heard about it once or twice. And that's really important in promotion, in commercialism. You want to make sure that people have an attachment to your brand, to your name. So to have that public announcement from the start to announce the project that's going to be coming, to announce the funds, it's a great way to start introducing the community to the project that will be on its way. And there's really no secret formula to your project. It does take work, creativity, attention to detail. And sometimes we'll take certain elements for granted, and that'll cause us a bit of trouble later on. So a few quick things as well is it's really important to have a good internal and external communication. Not only will it reassure you, but it will also reassure your team that someone has an eye on everything that's going on. So it's important to have that communication between your team members, as well as with your funder, maybe with your target audience or members, to have a better understanding of what's needed. And as well, you want to have a good communication in the promotion of the event. Make sure that the dates, the times, the information that is important is clear and properly communicated. And then you also want to make sure that you keep the funder updated of any changes to your project. So this could be maybe a change in your dates of your activities. It could be a number of meetings if your project is a consultation session. It could be the number of partnerships that you're establishing. If these things change, it's good to keep your funder updated in case, again, it might have an impact on your grant agreement or on the criterias. And the best person to flag that or to signal that to you if you're unsure is, of course, your funder. So another great step is to have regular meetings with your team. It will help you catch mistakes, avoiding things that slip through the cracks, and it'll help develop innovative and creative ideas for the project. I typically suggest that for the first few weeks of a project, you'll have a meeting every day or every second day. And then after that, you can move on to maybe on a weekly basis. And then once you get to maybe the week of the activities, depending on what your project is, obviously, you again start having more frequent meetings. So those regular team meetings can be really useful. They don't need to be long. They can be maybe half an hour, but it really does help everyone stay on the same page and progress for the project at the same rate. So I haven't seen any questions pop up. That was the majority of the content for the webinar. I'm now going to talk very quickly about the new round of funding that's coming. So I'll keep an eye on the questions, on the Q&A on the chat. If there's any questions about the content, I'll come back and answer those, but I'll just move on to the new round of funding quickly. So we do have a new round of funding, and the deadline to submit your project will be May 6th. And the question has appeared. Perfect. Yes, perfect. Creative ideas for feedback, something to think about. Yes, and I've seen a lot of different ways that they've implemented that through. It could be a one-on-one exchange through students, and they ask the student to tell the story to the other one, what they learned today, and they have that personal exchange between each other. That can be fun too. I've seen a lot of various solutions to that, so it's always great to see those. Thank you, Adriana. So yeah, submit in your project before May 6th, 2022. Again, if for those who haven't submitted to Bilingual Ottawa yet, it's an online portal. You can connect through ottawabilingue.ca. And we also have, it's in English and in French. So you could submit your project in English or in French, depending on what you're more comfortable with. And there's about a 1-month evaluation process. And then we start getting in contact with the people who have received funding. So to help support the writing process, we do have a few resources. So there are the application guides online for both types of projects, so activation as well as propulsion, and both are available in English and in French. So in there, you'll see the different criteria, the different admissibilities, your percentage point attributions for per questions in the application process. So it really gives you a good in-depth idea of what we're looking at and what we're looking for in the project applications. We also have webinars. So we had this series of winning strategies, the 4 webinars, but we also had other resources on our YouTube channel before in regards to putting a project in place during a pandemic. A lot of the other resources are only in French, unfortunately, but the winning strategies is bilingual. So if ever you guys are wondering about the other ones that are in French, but you don't quite have the right information, let me know, and I'd be willing to have a one-on-one meeting and discuss that info. And if I have enough requests, we might end up redoing them bilingual. So that'd be fun to do as well. We also have a FAQ, frequently asked questions, on our website. So whenever I get repeated questions from people who are submitting, I'll try and throw them in there with a very solid answer. So feel free to visit that as well. And another available resource is to have a virtual meeting with the program manager, who is me. There's a link either through my email signature or even on the website. You can click to reserve a meeting with the program manager, and that will create an automatic Google Meets meeting and time that you can select based on my availability. So we won't have to go back and forth 2-3 times. You can just select a time and we'll be there to meet and discuss your project. So with that being said, that's pretty much all I had for you today. It was a pretty quick session, just going in and making sure we touch on some last few points that we hadn't covered on the last 3 webinars. So again, I hope you had a great day. Thank you very much for being with us. Remember, deadline to submit projects will be May 6th. But I'll be sticking around in this chat in case people have questions or Q&As. I'll be here to answer questions for the next couple of minutes. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.